Welcome to the Truth Podcast. I'm your host, Hany Rambod. I'm here with my co-host, Austin, and we are here to talk about mental health.
Big topic.
Yes, very big topic. And the reason why we're talking about this is because some things that came to fruition on our last episode with Nick Walker, one of the things that he had to talk about was, and he unpacked it a little bit to the point where I think we were, both surprised. You were sitting in the studio even though you weren't on air. And I was blown away because I hadn't heard about that.
Oh, I hadn't either. Yeah, because I think he said he only talked about it on one other podcast, correct?
I believe he talks about it, or he's talked about it a couple of times. I don't know if it was Fuad's podcast or if it was one of the other interviews, but I had definitely not seen it before.
Yeah.
And I feel that obviously there is a physical abuse side that he talked about being molested as a child.
Mm-hmm.
And I hate for you guys to go into this so deep, but it's so important. I don't know if you have children or if you have nieces or if you have nephews or, brothers and sisters. Anyone who's listening to this will connect to some degree.
Oh, for sure.
Some more than others. But with all the things that are going on in this world, I think that we really need to talk about this because there's another person that hasn't been in the news lately, and that's Colum.
Yep.
And Colum is obviously going through some things himself. But I think what we should do is we should talk about things that we can do to be able to communicate better. And whether you're, again, a mother, a father, a sister, a brother, anything like that, but the way he has used training as a therapy and how that really resonates with me because it really helps anxiety. And this world was designed around anxiety was designed through evolution for you to get up off your ass and go hunt and be able to go and, hunt for food.
Yeah.
So think about that. Generationally, through thousands of years of evolution, when you get hungry, it creates anxiety. When you have anxiety, you have to propel yourself to get up and go. Go find the herd. Go find forage for food somehow and be able to do those things so that you can make sure that you can feed yourself and your family. So we're going to the basic essence of survival. So these hormones that get released in your body create those things. That angst, that earnest, that wanting, that longing to go out and get off your ass and do these things. Now, in this society where you can just pick up the phone and DoorDash.
There's no hunting involved.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you're tired because you've been on your blue light mechanism, whether it's your phone, your iPad, your computer, whatever. And now you are caffeinated. So you're in this circle.
We're just breeding anxiety.
And you're breeding anxiety.
Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit about all these things because I think that there are different ways of going about it, but the end point is the fact that you can use training to reduce that. Now, I'm not saying for those of you that are listening to this podcast or watching it on YouTube, for you to go out of your way and cut out your medication and just start working out.
Yeah.
You might have to turn around and work with a therapist and say, hey, look, how can I turn around and do these things? Just like they're going to say, well, you're doing 600 milligrams of caffeine a day. Well, let's also cut that back as well.
Yeah.
So you have to try to be able to look at all angles. Are you eating right? Because again, food also can cause a lot of those mood swings.
Big time. I notice that day by day. I think that if you kind of start to come a little bit more in touch with your body, you're like, I feel terrible today, even just mentally. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I didn't eat I ate like trash earlier or whatever that might be. But I think that that's really an interesting point because I just feel like there is two types of people, those who just get buried by anxiety and then those who use it as fuel to just launch them. And I feel like there are many champions you hear about or just top level in whatever sport or even an art form, whatever it might be, they excel in their category. A lot of them have fuel from either in a traumatic event or something big from their childhood or whatever it might be. And they use that depression or anxiety or whatever it might be to just, I'm going to buckle down and just master my craft. But do you kind of know what the difference is between those two people of how to kind of use it for fuel and not be buried by it?
I think what ends up happening is early on when these traumatic experiences happen, these triggering moments in your life, a lot of that road has been paved. So when you sit down and you start drinking, and he says he got into drugs. And again, this is really fresh. So this is one of the reasons why I'm using Nick Walker as an example for what his traumatic experience was. Yeah. And he was able to unravel that because he talked to his mom, who he was very close with. So what does that bring us to? Communication.
Yep.
So whether it's communication with your mom, your dad, your significant other, a therapist, you need to be able to communicate at a very high level. And it's not just communicating once in a while and having a 2 or 3 hour conversation. It's communicate deeply and often. And deeply is a relative term. You need to realize what that is by being able to say, I can talk to somebody for 2 hours, but not really get to the heart of the matter. And it's very surface. Or you can turn around and say, okay, I want to be able to get in deeper for a 30-minute, 20-minute conversation because I'm not going to beat around the bush. I'm going to say what's wrong. I'm going to say what happened. I'm going to say whether it was a life-altering experience earlier, something that seriously happened at work, something that ended up is really causing me angst because your significant other triggered you in a certain way because of whatever. Those things need to happen. But I think that the stuff that becomes trying for people around you is when you sit there and you take up a lot of time, but you're not getting to the root of whatever that evil was in your mind. Because it's all perspective. And nobody on the other side can say, well, that's important or not important. Yeah. I don't know why you're so upset, because it's how you feel and what it was to you. And so all in all, going back to training helps cut out the highs and lows. It really helps therapeutically with getting that energy out, that emotional angst, a lot of that anxiety. And you have to be really careful when you take pre-workouts and when you take caffeinated beverages, and you have to say, okay, is this helping me or is this really hurting me, especially if I have a high level of anxiety? In some people, i.e. Colum, might have gone down that dark road with certain drugs because he was in a bad place. And then, recreational wise. Recreational wise. But then hormonally, that can also alter the highs and lows. So when is there going to be a high? Well, guess what? I'm going to be, taking a bunch of gear. Yeah. I'm going to be, as they say in the gym now here when I'm in Dallas, I'm trend out. And then they go over and they feel very excited, very aggressive, very, very like, I'm going to go ahead and I can run through walls and I feel like $1,000,000. And then they come off their gear.
Big difference.
And it's not just a big difference, man. It's literally becoming bipolar.
Yeah. So then you compensate with other things.
100%. 100%. So then you go, okay, well, I have to come off the gear because my body, my liver enzymes, everything is through the roof. Now let me turn around and feel better with either eating crap because that's going to make me feel better, and then I'm going to get fat, and then I'm going to get depressed. So then you feel great for the night, and then you feel like crap, and then those are the highs and lows. Then whether it's drugs, whether it's alcohol, whether it's any of those things, people start popping pills and doing all kinds of things. I grew up in an age where there was legitimately people who thought that it was okay to take Nubane, right? It's a synthetic opiate, so that they can, quote unquote, go beyond the pain threshold. It was all bullshit. Yeah. It was all bullshit. It was just designed so that you could turn around and utilize a painkiller as a doctor for a procedure or some type of medication to be able to cover up pain for short-term use. But people were literally using it. I've seen people mainline it, like not in front of me, but they were telling me that they're mainline. And I said, why would you do such a thing? This is like 20, 25 years ago. And they said, because a lot of people are doing it. Similar to what I heard from Derek Lunsford about the vaping pens and saying whether they're THC-based, whether they're nicotine-based, any of those types of vape products, or whether they're smoking it, eating it,
So prominent right now. It's everywhere.
Yeah, and see, I don't see that as often because I'm wrapped up with work. I'm wrapped up with clients. Yeah. But I'm trying to be more aware because my son just turned 9, and I'm trying to understand that because around this time is when they're getting introduced to this stuff because there might be somebody in a grade or 2 higher that is going to introduce them, or somebody on the bus is like, look, check it out because my sister was using this. And then, and then they go, oh, that's cool. Right. So, and the way you go around that is myself and my wife, we're always big into fitness. And we were always big into being able to educate him early on what's bad for you, and that's how it's going to hurt your fitness, or that's going to hurt your taekwondo. He's very big into taekwondo, and he wants to turn around and do that. And he says, okay, well, that could hinder my performance. And that's how I was brought up, right? It was, my dad was a coach and my mom was a teacher, and it was always about like, drugs and alcohol are bad because it's going to hinder your performance, whether it's your mental performance in classroom or your physical performance on the field, because I was big into playing football and or in the gym, early on. So all of these things that we're talking about right now have to do with saying, hey, look, make sure you lean on training. Make sure you lean on eating clean to help your mental aspect of your life.
Yeah.
Focus on making sure that those parts are aligned, because the world is becoming more toxic. There's a lot of things that are going to come at you that are going to be so toxic, but almost necessary, i.e. social media. And you're going to have to figure out how to be able to quantify using both. Being able to say, hey, look, I have to use social media because I'm an influencer or I'm sponsored by a company. And how many of us just sometimes just don't want to post?
Yeah.
We don't want to do this. It's your job.
Yeah.
And you're getting up in the morning and you had a 9 to 5, if you ever had a 9 to 5, because there's a lot of people who didn't, and that's a whole different story.
Exactly.
But there's a lot of people who have never had a 9 to 5, and their jobs are different. But it's about posting and this and that. But if you had a 9 to 5 job, you couldn't just be like, hey man, I'm not coming in today, or I wanted to sleep in because I was up all night watching Netflix, or I was playing, I'm going to throw it out there, Minecraft.
That's still fairly relevant. You're not too far off.
I guess it's more, what's the other one? What's the other online game?
I mean, what right now? Call of Duty and Fortnite and all that kind of
Fortnite.
stuff.
That was the one. That was the one that, my son also plays. But
there's a different level of accountability when there's a place you have to be and people that are counting on you.
That's right.
Set place instead of just, and I also think that people are having a really, really hard time balancing the personal side of social media versus them being a business. And if somebody comes at your business or is leaving a comment or whatever, you're like, it's a review towards your business, you might get a little bit, touchy on it, or, whatever that might be, but you're not necessarily looking at it as a personal attack. But anything on social media, people are so tightly interwoven with their financial side as well as it's their personal page. So if somebody comes at them, it's for their appearance or the way that they talk or what. And I think that is causing, like, people have a really tough time separating themselves personally a little bit from their social media if it's their business. And it's very much that is helping to cause a lot of that depression and anxiety because you're kind of getting personally attacked, or everything is directly tied to your looks in the fitness industry. Like that's something that can really mess with your mental health.
Right. And that's why, again, people, what they do is they sit down and say, I always have to be shredded because I'm chasing likes. I got to do these 200-pound dumbbell incline presses because so-and-so did them and got 100,000 likes. So I got to turn around and do that. And it's very hard because, like you said, as we turn around and we really put our lives online, and you're using that as a way of being able to build your business, your personal brand, it becomes very distinct in terms of the crossover is just always there. It's very, very clear that you can't separate. And some do, some will have like a little personal channel and say, this is what my friends, family, all this. I'm going to post my kids. I'm going to do this. I'm going to post a lot of my stuff that I wouldn't post, but I'm going to go ahead and only have like 100 followers, 50 followers. And I'm going to be able to share that, or they'll do it on their Facebook, the old Facebook, which is becoming like MySpace in a way. But a lot of people still use it, but they'll find different avenues to be able to share certain things, but they don't feel comfortable sharing everything. How many people do I know or that are married, but they don't post their significant other online?
Yeah. Or I know people who keep, faces private, or they just don't tag the person or whatever that might be. And because there's some crazy stories, of just what can happen if you're putting your entire life out there. So yeah, I definitely seen a lot of people go that route of having a private Instagram. It's just their close-knit group so they can share certain life updates and different things like that. And then they have their business page.
Right. And then they also have the little option to do close friends.
Yeah, exactly.
And you can also do that as well. Just make sure you press the right button.
Yeah, exactly. Well, people usually use that for things that they just don't want to put out there in front of. It's usually very private stuff.
Your OnlyFans page?
Oh, yeah.
Is that what you're saying? Your OnlyFans page? Yeah. So I think that the way everyone has to look at this with the mental health aspect of it is the fact that if you want to treat anxiety, and we're talking about from the days that we were cavemen and we were running around chasing after little animals to try to eat and beat the hell out of them and to eat them, and that anxiety was designed through evolution and for you to be able to go out and do these things. And if you use that anxiety correctly and you use that anxiety towards a common goal, you can be very, very powerful. That is a superpower.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen people do it, and then I've seen some people buckle because of it. And there's
a lot of people, like most of the population, I would see, say buckle under because I think just many of them don't know what it feels like to get in there and train hard or whatever it might be, running or anything to get that out of your system.
Right. And some people will do what I did. When I stopped training and I was doing so much training with whether it was personal training, whether it was coaching, whether it was running my business, I used my anxiety when it came to work. It wasn't a healthy way of doing it, but it was a very productive way. And that's one of the reasons I moved to Dallas, was to be able to build balance, because I felt that there was a lot of different things that I couldn't control and that I could hear, so that I can be able to do more for not only our customers out in California, but all over the world, because I couldn't give this kind of content out there. I didn't have a podcast studio that I could walk into if we had an issue with the one we had in the office. Mm-hmm. I didn't have any of these different types of offerings that are here because the Bay Area was so expensive that many companies or small companies couldn't thrive in that kind of environment. Yeah. So you see the Netflixes and the Googles and the Facebooks and everything else that do really, really well because they're so big, they're behemoths.
Yeah.
So we were surrounded by them. I mean, eBay was just right up the road. Netflix was literally less than 1 block away from us. All of those things, their world headquarters were there. We're not talking about small little offices. So when that happens, real estate prices go up and all these things, there wasn't these offerings. So coming into the studio and you finding this and say, hey, look, we can do this while we're having our headquarters built out. This is great because I can walk in. We got Michael, we got Spider, we got all these guys that are able to help us out. And it really helps because now I can come in here and do a podcast with you, whether it's about a show, whether it's with a guest, whether it's with any of the things that we want to talk about, and be in and out within an hour to 2 hours. And then we walk away and they take care of it. All of these things were not provided for us out in the Bay because, again, the limitations. Yeah. Now, when we talk about this anxiety and all of these things, I really feel that a lot of my anxiety, when I have to break it down, it was because of all of the work and all of the things. Everyone's like, oh, Hany's a control freak. I am. Mm-hmm. I'm a control freak because I am not with clients. I'm not with my athletes 24/7. They're 12 time zones away. And I have to sit down and hope they're going to do what I tell them to do. And I know that there's going to always be fractions of people who follow or don't follow what I'm going to tell them. Or I might have to think ahead a couple of steps and say, I know that they're probably not going to do this, so I might have to ask for this. And I have to calculate that in. Correct. So all of these things that happen, I have to turn around and be able to do. So imagine how much anxiety that creates for me.
Oh, yeah. A lot of people relying on you just within the company and within your athletes and the athletes' families because the athletes are going to perform and all that. There's a lot of pressure there. And I think one actually thing that clicked in my mind whenever you were saying that is I think that everybody can do with more of this is to sit down, look at all aspects of your life and think about what things can I change to pluck out these things that are causing anxiety? Like what can I, because I think that you just kind of get buried and you're like, I'm anxious about this. And then you don't think, okay, how can I, moving here sounds like, okay, I've removed some of these pieces from the table that were causing a lot of anxiety. And some of these ones are always going to be there. But now I can manage these a lot more because some of these outside ones are gone or delegating it out to somebody. I think having that self-awareness to sit down and go, these things are causing anxiety, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a family tie, I don't know what, a job, whatever. And like, how can I remove a couple of these things so I can focus on my main goal that I have? It sounds like that's what a lot of this move was just plucking out some of those things that were causing a lot of anxiety in your life.
Absolutely. And what happens is I have a saying that says high tide raises all
Yep.
ships. It's a saying that's been out there for many, many years. And I felt like, what's the point of me being able to win if my employees, my consultants, my athletes can't win?
Mm-hmm.
And I can sit there and make sure that they win shows as athletes. So that's kind of taken care of because they're not living in the same area as me, which is very, very high real estate values, and it costs to be able to get home ownership. But I can't fix the price of homes because of where we're at. I don't have the ability to turn around and open up the next Tesla, not yet, or Netflix or Facebook to be able to give stock options as a publicly traded company, which they could do to do that. So I kept thinking, what else can I do? I'm the only supplement company in the entire Bay Area. And I said, this is creating so much anxiety for me. And many, many times have I talked about the passing of my father was the trigger. It was the straw that broke the camel's back for me to finally say, I need to physically move, because it was a constant reminder of him coming to my office, checking in with me, coming over, saying hi to Nick and everybody else. And that was my trigger that said, you know what, I have to get away from this environment, because now not only do I not have control over the real estate market, but now I also don't have control over the fact that he passed. I felt like there's a lot of stuff that could have been different about that situation, and I didn't have control. And so when he was sick and he was in life support for weeks, I just said, I'm going to do the best I can with what I have to work with. And I'm not going to find my solution at the bottom of a bottle of vodka. I'm not going to turn around and do this. I'm going to turn around and work. I came out with more products than I ever have because I wanted to refocus my attention. And the worst part about it is I couldn't even go to the gym because the gyms were closed. So we put on the deck a canopy, some weights. If any of you guys followed me back during, that time, I was trying to train. I was recovering from a torn rotator cuff from getting hit head on from a drunk driver in January of 2020, a month before the pandemic hit. So I was recovering from that surgery and I was trying to train. And it's like, how do you get rid of anxiety when you just had surgery? And so all of these things, but look, I'm not going to bitch. I'm just going to try to find ways. So that's what I did. So it wasn't always physical. So I'm not trying to say it has to be working out, but working out would have been a great ability, a great way for me to get the therapy that I needed emotionally to be able to burn off my anxiety when I'm sleeping 1 or 2 hours, constantly calling the hospital, constantly calling the doctors. And at one point in the beginning, I had both parents in the hospital. They were both hospitalized in 2 different hospitals. So I had to try to figure out how to stay calm and create damage control. And doing preps made this easy.
Yeah.
Because I had to deal with chaos. And all you got to do is you got to change up the widgets in your head. And as unemotional as that sounds, that's what you got to do. You're triaging the situation. You're trying to go in there and trying to fix things as quickly and as emotionless as possible so you make proper decisions. Because as we all know, when we get emotional, the
clear decisions aren't happening.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct.
And I think that one of the things that definitely makes you the coach that you are, it seems, is, you look at a situation, a person, and think about all the little factors going on and like, okay, what can we tweak here? What can we do there? What's affecting you emotionally? What's doing and so it sounds like you apply that to your own life in a way, like, okay, this is happening. Parents in the hospital, the COVID's happening, all of these things. And you're like, okay, what are the things that I can control? What can I fix? What can I change here? That's like the best route to go. But I don't know if everybody has that necessarily, that capability of taking a step back, almost looking at themselves in third person and making those adjustments and tweaks here and there,
But now that they're listening to this podcast and they're going to try.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the thing. If you can sit down and really focus on making sure that you understand where your strengths and weaknesses are, and you can try to apply some of these principles, it's going to really help you, because what you're going to be able to do is vent. Mm-hmm. It's okay to vent. I'm not telling people not to do that. Believe me, I do. Ask Nick. I'll sit there and vent to him and I'll get it out. It'll be 5-10 minutes, get it over with, then come up with a game plan. Let the emotional part be thrown out at the sounding board.
Yeah.
And make sure that as you vent, you turn around and don't react.
Mm-hmm.
when you're triggered. And don't go down that hole of, hey, I'm going to start hitting some beers or have a couple of shots, or I'm going to get on the vape pen, or I'm going to do some edibles, or whatever drug or crutch that you think that is going to help you, which will go down a very dark path. It's talk to somebody, vent, don't react, then turn around as you calm down, and then make a proper decision on whatever happened or whatever you need to make a decision on at that given moment.
Yeah, when you have clarity.
When you have clarity, because you can't be emotional and rational at the same time.
Yeah. I think that's like an example of that also, as people say, say if you want to buy something, wait a day. If you still want to, then you can go ahead and buy it. But it's like we make a lot of decisions if we're emotional, if we're in the moment, if we're really, really happy. You sometimes make decisions that are just because it's like you're feeling good at the moment. Then later on, you're like, it might not have been the smartest decision. But one thing that I also heard you say was talking about when you talk to Nick, I think it's important to not just surround yourself with people, surround yourself with good listeners. Like people who listen to hear, not just listen to respond or throw things at you. Like, I'm sure you've talked to people. And
I'm horrible at it. I'll be honest with you. I'm horrible at it because I'm a fixer, right? Most men are fixers. Yeah. You have your girl telling you, hey, this, and this, and they're not even done telling you what the problem is. And you're like, well, I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go do this. Don't worry. It's going to be taken care of. Or did you talk to this person? And you're like, let him finish.
Yeah.
Take a breath.
Yeah.
They may be venting, and let them get everything out. Then try to do that. I'm the worst. I'm the worst at that because I just want to hurry up and fix it, right? So I have to tell myself to do the same thing as well. I have to turn myself, but that's the thing. You have to listen, whether it's coming from, you can't just, and also you got to make sure you don't dump, right? You can't be so one-sided all the time because if you do that, whether it's a friend, whether it's a relationship, what ends up happening is that the scales that are unbalanced and they're too unbalanced for too long, people end up becoming toxic.
Yeah.
And you got to be careful of that too. Yeah. So it's a balancing act.
I think for too long is a good point because there's going to be, you're in a friendship. I have a buddy who's like, he might be going through something for a period of time. It's going to flip flop. I'm going through something. Like you weigh each other out. But you don't want to just have somebody who's just 24/7 just putting everything out because then it's not venting or looking for help. It's just their natural state. It's just everything is just outside.
Well, yeah. And you're not there to be their therapist.
Yeah.
But at the same time, depending on what your relationship was with that person, you have to respect the boundaries. And I feel like as I was been a coach for a very, very long time, and I've worked with lots of different personalities, you do have to become a bit of a therapist. And any good coach knows that. You do have to listen. You have to figure out like so-and-so's having Bobby and Susie are having, marital problems, or they're breaking up, or there's some other financial problems because of A, B, and C. All of these things have to be listened to, and you can give your best advice. But at the end of the day, everybody has to respect boundaries to a certain point. So you have to understand, who is this person? What kind of relationship do you have? How many clients do you have? Who can you do this with? Who can you not do it with? Because if you have umpteen number of clients, that's one of the reasons why I never took on a lot of clients, is because I wouldn't be able to check all the boxes because that's who I am, just naturally. As my wife would say, you care too much sometimes. You care more than the person that you care for. Yeah. They don't even care about it as much as you do. And I said, that's because they're not aware of how important these other things are. Yeah. And so when you look at everything, what it boils down to is making sure that you're communicating. Make sure that you're putting yourself in a situation where you're not reaching for something as a crutch, whether it's food that makes you feel better for a short moment in time, or whether it's, drugs, alcohol, any of those things on the recreational side. And then if you are using PEDs, even if it's HRT, let's just talk about HRT for a second, and you're doing a shot a week that your doctor has prescribed for you, know where you're at with that, because let's say your prescription ran out, and your prescription runs out for 2 weeks. And now all of a sudden at week 2, week 3 goes on, and now your hormones are dropping. You're starting to act out. You don't even know what it's from. You think that it's just because everybody around you is being a jerk. Well, what it really comes down to is the fact that you're just not as emotionally stable as you were because your hormonal profile has completely changed. So you need to understand that and say, oh shit, I need to go back, get my prescription, jump on my gear, and do my shot once a week like I'm prescribed, or once every 2 weeks, or whatever your protocol is, because that's going to help balance you out.
Because it's crazy how big of an impact hormones can have in anybody.
Yeah, think about it. I mean, women talk about it all the time, right?
Yeah.
They go, hey, look, I'm sorry, I'm PMSing, or I'm this, I'm that. And I'm not saying that it's an excuse. It's just, but it is a fact that you got to deal with that with your hormones. You just got to
be a little bit more aware during those periods of time. I had to constantly remind myself during my last prep. I had the first few, I didn't think about that. And I was just hungry and angry and all that stuff. And then the last one, I had to be like, okay, is this person actually being a jerk? Or is it me taking things that would not normally be a problem and making them a problem just because I'm hungry and irritated? It's like, that's the more important part, is like, you can feel those things. It's natural, but like, look internally and be like, is this them, or is this just all me because I'm hungry or hormonal, whatever it might be?
Right. But also because of anxiety, because you're always worried about, am I doing everything I can do to get ready for this show?
Exactly.
How many people have I worked with that blew up at nothing because as we got closer to the show, they're just freaking out.
Mm-hmm.
They're low on sleep. They're high on stims. They are at caloric deficit. Their body's beat up from doing cardio, from doing training, all of the things that they're going on, plus, like you said, hormonal fluctuations.
Yep.
So everybody has to be aware, including especially the person that's going through it. Because as that anxiety grows, because in the back of your head, you're thinking, when's my next meal? I'm hungry. Now I'm even more hungry because I'm fixated on that. All of these things have to be taken into consideration so that you can turn around and make proper decisions. Why do you think breakups happen during prep so often?
Everything's heightened.
Everything.
Every negative thing essentially is heightened.
That's right.
Yeah.
So how you circumvent that is you are self-aware, and you don't put yourself in situations where you might go without a meal, or that you're going to go and hang out and go to the movies. I'll tell you a good story right now is that I remember I was getting ready for a show, and one of the guys, Matt Allen, good friend of mine from way back when, we were in Santa Barbara. We went to a movie because we were going to go try to chill out. And I believe he was prepping. I was going to be getting ready for a show after that. And he's like, oh, it was like, I don't know if I remember what movie it was. And we went there, and 20 minutes into it, he's like, dude, I can't. We got to go. And I was like, what do you mean? He couldn't chill. His legs shaking. He's freaking out. And he's just like, we got to go. We got to go. And I'm like, okay. So we left because he just had too much anxiety.
Wow.
And it was one of those things that it just came to my mind because when we were in college, and I was prepping, and I believe this was either his first or second show he was getting ready for. He just didn't know what to understand or what to expect. Yeah, and even though I explained it to him, because even back then, 23 years ago, I'd still done a lot of preps, even by that standard then. But I was just trying to explain to him. But again, he couldn't handle the anxiety. So he's just like, I can't even watch this movie. I can't fixate on this movie. Where for me, movies have always been great because I'm a movie guy. I love movies, especially before the pandemic. I used to go and turn my phone on silent.
Yeah, it disconnects me. You're in a separate little bubble.
That's right.
For 2 hours or whatever, just to kind of focus and just kind of, just on one thing in front of you, not all of the things outside the room. It's a little cut off. Yeah, so I can't connect to that one because I've always been the same way of like movies are an escape, essentially. It
escapes you from your phone, which means your social media, any phone calls, text messages you put aside. And at the end of the day, there was two major things that were causing me to be able to help me, I should say, check out, and which was very, very sorely needed. Number one would be movies because it was really easy to be able to do that, especially in a theater because it changed your environment too versus at home where you still have distractions and you don't really.
It's different from watching a movie on your couch.
Absolutely.
Just sitting there. It's separate and you go do it. Yeah.
And so the other thing would have been the racetrack. So for me, racing was a big thing because you can't sit there and take calls, even though that did happen to me. It did happen to me because I put my phone one time. I was driving my Dodge Viper ACR. And we were going where
subtle flex.
No, it's not a subtle flex because it's at the end of the day, it was one of those things where I was, carrying a lot of speed, right? And I'm in Laguna Seca, Monterey, California, at Laguna Seca, and I was getting up to the approach for the corkscrew. And if anybody is a car nerd, whether they've done tracking or whether they've actually drove Laguna Seca virtually even through some of the games that are out there. Corkscrew is like a 6-story drop that comes down. It's a blind turn. And my phone starts to ring. And I'm approaching full throttle up to the Corkscrew. And all of a sudden, and I'm like, what? And it's going through the Bluetooth.
Oh, no way.
Because it was still connected. Even though it was in, I thought I had it off. It was actually like on silent, but somehow it was still connected to the point where the phone was ringing through there. And I'm trying to figure out, is the car like going to explode? What's going on? What's that noise from? Why is the phone ringing? Because all you're doing is focusing on this next turn.
Yeah.
And so thank God I didn't, do anything. I just went through the turn. Yeah. And then during the cool down, I think the couple of turns later, it was the front straight, and I think we hit a checkered flag. And then I answered the phone, and it was my best friend. He's like, "Hey, bro, how's the track?" And I go, "Dude, yeah, you almost killed me, Wall."
Exactly.
I go, "Why? You almost killed me." And he's like, "Oh, you shouldn't have answered the phone."
I think it's a great example of like how, if you're that type of person, you can get so zoned into something that just helps you have a moment of peace and focus on just one thing in front of you, that even just the phone ringing can just like rip you out of it for a second. Like you didn't even realize what was happening, like what was making that noise. But normally you'd just be like, "Oh, it's my phone ringing." But you just are so zoned in on that. Well, I think it's really important to find those things for you, whatever that might be. Everybody's going to be different with those
Absolutely.
things.
Some people like to go fishing. Some people like to go and be able to do walks, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Whatever it is. And again, if it's physical, even better, because then you get physically tired. Mm. And as you become physically tired, it helps you wind down at night so you're not staying on the phone. And that's a big thing, because I always feel much, much better when I'm the days that I train versus my days off, because then even if I'm caffeinated in the morning and I take something, and what it does is it allows me to be able to wind down, because I'm physically tired. But if not, mentally, I'm always going. Mm-hmm. I'm always going. Like I've thought about some of my best ideas when I was working on certain projects while I was sleeping, and I kind of woke up and I'm like, I just dreamt about this. Let me get a pen and paper.
Yeah.
And I literally went over and grabbed a notebook and started writing some things down. And then I'm calling Nick and I'm going, "Hey, Nick, we need to work on this, this, and this." And he's like, "Okay, man." And he's probably like 50 notes.
It came to me in a dream.
He's got 50 notepads next to his computer, and he's got them all written down for like the last 10 and a half years of ideas. And some of them we execute on, and some of them we just
Hany's dream journal.
That's it.
It's just
that's it.
It is important to have a notepad and pen right next to your bed. You can come up with a lot of stuff or random thoughts, because it's your little moments of clarity.
It is. I'm using my phone more, so I'm a little bit proud of that.
Yeah.
I'm using my phone more, but for the most part, because I keep losing notebooks. So now if it's really important, I'll write it down and take a picture of it.
There you go.
Yeah. So it's almost like business cards nowadays. When you get a business card, you take a picture of it because you're like, "Dude, I'm going to lose this shit." I'm going to lose this shit. And so that's it. But I guess everybody needs to go through this to some degree, this little self-made course of saying, how do you turn around and fix the anxiety? Am I doing all the things am I doing so that I could be doing? Am I getting the rest? Am I getting enough sleep? Am I getting tired enough to sleep well? Am I making sure I'm not over caffeinating? Am I making sure that I'm training and not just going through the motions to go through and say, "Hey, I went to the gym," and you just do, 4 sets, 10 to 15 reps, all of that, versus really pushing yourself.
Yeah.
Because again, a lot of times your body adapts to the point where it doesn't even recognize that as training. You really got to go a little bit more balls to the wall so that you can turn around and be able to get tired, because your body just is in good shape because you're just been doing this for so long.
Oh, my mind is also always most clear after those workouts where you push those last, 3 to 4 forced reps on those. Like you just have that little bit of oomph in there where you just push extra hard. I feel like after it's just like everything has been cleared.
Yeah, those are what I call the sets you can see.
Yeah.
Those are the reps you can see.
Yeah.
That's the difference that you're going to have in looking the same versus pushing yourself to the next level. But those are all important because, again, this episode was supposed to be about mental health and what you have to do and how therapeutic training is. Yeah. But it's only as therapeutic as all the other things you do, the 23 hours you do outside the gym.
Yeah.
So
I think that's a big topic just right now, as far as just it's really important for a lot of young people to hear this, because fitness is traveling into the TikTok world and down into, people are training really, 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 really hard at 15, 16, 17, 18. And then there's other things that come with it. And a lot of people are just being launched into this world with not much preparing them for how to handle it.
Yeah. When you speak about TikTok, you have such a young audience, and they're like a dry sponge.
Yeah.
They're just absorbing information at huge rates. You need to really set a standard for information, because the information out there is such garbage, because people have recycled it and recycled it and recycled it. And it's like a telephone game.
Yeah.
And what they've done is, somebody early on had done a show once, took someone's program that was probably cut and pasted from something else. Then that's turned around. And if anybody knows what the telephone game is it means that basically when somebody picks up the phone and calls and says, hey, Austin, did you hear Hany got a fender bender, or he got like a ding in his door, let's just say, in the parking lot. And then you go and you speak to somebody else, and then that ding becomes a dent. Then next thing you know, by the seventh person, Hany's in ICU.
Yeah.
He did, and they're like, no, it's the telephone game, because every time it gets warped to some degree by some kind of add-ons. And that is the same with these influencer and these online programs, because it's been regurgitated so many different ways that now all of a sudden you're getting some convoluted mess of advice, whether it's through some online portal program, or if it's through, the worst part, through just social media, putting things out there. And what happens is that information is so, for lack of a better term, just incorrect. It's so incorrect. And to the point where sometimes it's not even safe. Some of the things that I've seen people do, and I don't want to bring them up because I don't want to glorify them. But what happens is, actually I will. Taking in 100 grams of protein, sitting there per meal, doing 100 grams of protein. I have my biggest guys who are doing 50, 60 grams of protein per meal. And again, is there certain subtle things where you might have to go up for that elite level 300-pound guy that you might have to go a little higher? Absolutely. But on average, 25 to 50 grams of protein per meal is where you need to sit, period.
Yeah.
For 90% of the people out there.
Well, because the people who are listening who are going to try it are 160 pounds.
Exactly, because they think that if I'm 160 pounds, I have to do 160 pounds of protein, or I'm going to have to sit down and do the Liver King thing, or I have to leave liver from some kind of animal or raw, and I'm going to steal their powers, or whatever he says. I don't know. I've heard
ancestral powers.
Yeah, it's something. Have you heard of that?
I've seen the Liver King all over the place.
Okay,
everywhere.
So that's the situation. But when you sit down and you really look at it, you have to understand all of this information out there, which most of it is inaccurate, these young people are listening to, and they don't realize people pass peptides and SARMs around like it's nothing.
Yeah.
They think that is more toxic than creatine.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
the telephone game right there. That now we're in a weird world where tren and creatine are on a same level, even close to each other. And it's like, how did this happen?
What's happened is people have glorified it, or they justified it, and they have, for whatever reason, again, usually it's some gym dealer, or if it's some influencer online that wants to be quote unquote open, and then they water it down so that they can turn around and justify in their own head what they're doing. And then they bring in these droves of kids, and these kids don't understand. You build great physiques naturally first. And then you turn around, and then if you decide to want to dabble in PEDs, you do it in the right way by being able to have someone who's some kind of quote unquote, I want to use the word expert, but somebody who can turn around and guide you to a degree where if you decide to do that, you're going to do it safely, okay, or the safest way possible.
Yeah.
Right? But if you're going to go and listen to somebody and say, hey, look, this guy on TikTok said that I got to take 400 milligrams of this, 300 milligrams of that, 500 milligrams of this, and I'm going to turn around and do this, or I got to take these peptides, or I got to take these SARMs, and this is what's going to happen. It's going to go really, really bad, and it's going to happen really fast. And these are the kids that are ending up liver failure, a lot of things that are happening with just getting, rushed to the ER, all of these things. But they don't understand that a lot of this information is inaccurate, because they'll say, this Mr. Olympia did this, or this person did this. And we've talked about diuretics and insulin and all these other things. But and how bad they are. But at the end of the day, when you really look at it for these younger audience members, and some of them are going to be starting to listen a little bit more here possibly, what you got to understand is everything revolves around training, number one, number two, diet, and then number three, supplements. And then once you get all of those things perfected, then down the road, if you decide to go down that other road, then start to be able to do your research and all of those things ahead of time. Yeah. And then you can make that decision. But really try to max yourself out naturally so that you can be able to really get the best response out of your body. But it's almost like, if I wanted to be able to use an analogy of a car, if you take a car and you don't do simple brake upgrades, suspension upgrades, and then you just throw a bottle of nitrous on it, you're just going to blow the motor and you're not going to have brakes to slow down at the end of the road.
Yeah.
And that's just how it works.
Yeah. And I think it also not only physically makes a big difference, but it shows that emotionally you are level and intelligent enough to make a conscious decision to move into that next phase a few years later, instead of making an emotional reaction and just jumping straight into it because I feel small or I feel fat.
Well, that's the plug-in, right? When we're talking about the emotional side of this, people are going to feel, oh, I'm going to feel like Superman doing this. You have to be emotionally mature enough to say, I'm going to put this in my plan later, but I have to do all of these things first. And then I can decide. That's why you're not supposed to be drinking until you're 21. Mm-hmm. You're not, because you're not going to make good decisions when you're younger.
Yeah.
This is why. It's not because they don't want you to start growing and they want you to be able to go to the pharmacy at 15 years old and pick up a bottle of Deca. Yeah. It's not that. It's because at the end of the day, you have to be able to understand the choices that you're about to make. And those choices are, again, alcohol at 21, smoking. I don't even know what the age of smoking is anymore.
I think it's 21.
Yeah, I don't know if it's 18 or 21. Like but at the end of the day, those are the choices that you're making because you're going to be mentally mature enough to make those decisions. But when you're watching these things and you're watching these influencers and they got ripped abs all the time and they're this or that and they've got tons of likes and they're driving Lambos and they've got, women, all around them, and they're sitting there just glorifying their lifestyle, which 90% of the time is not even accurate.
No, they're rented cars, rented houses.
You're trying to say the rented girls?
That's what I was going to go next. But it's not wrong. It's not wrong.
It isn't. And so I think that at the end of the day, what needs to happen is all of these things in the younger audience, please, whether you can mentor somebody who's younger in the gym and be able to help them, and if you're seeing certain things, I mean, I try to every time I'm at the gym because I'm in a gym now that's completely polar opposite of the gyms that I've trained in before. In the Bay Area, these kids can't afford to live where they live here now, because unless they're with their parents. But most of these kids are, I'm graduated high school and I'm living on my own because, their rent is $1,500, $1,200 and they got like a roommate or two. That doesn't happen in the Bay. The Bay is like $3,000 for a one bedroom and up. But that's why people in their 30s still live with their parents. Yeah. Late 20s, 30s live with their parents in the Bay. But what happens now is they just basically take what the other person's doing. It could be a roommate, it could be a training partner, or somebody that they see at the gym. And if you're that guy in the gym that can be able to correctly lead them on to a right path, to a better path, a healthier path, then please go out and do it. I do it every day. When I see the kids come up to me and when I say kids, I use that term loosely. It's like a 16-year-old all the way up to like a 28-year-old.
Yeah.
And these guys come up to me and they're asking me questions. It could be about PEDs. It could be about training. It could be about nutrition. It could be about any of these things. Because again, it always kind of has that little bit of that, hey, what do you think? My friend's doing this. And I go, how old are you?
Asking for a friend.
17, 18. No, hold on. Wait.
Yeah.
Max your, work on this, this, and this. And I'll give them specifics to work on so that they can go do that. And then usually a month later or 2 months later, they'll come back. And there's a kid, David, that trains at our gym. And same way, he was just kind of asking about training stuff. And he was somebody that's 5'10", 180 pounds. And I saw he's got some potential, this kid. He's a teenage kid. And he just turned 19. And I started kind of watching him. And I'm like, well, he doesn't know how to train back. And that's why he doesn't have a really good developed back. So I sat down and I was training. I can't remember who it was in town. And then after I was done, I went over to him and I gave him some pointers. And he really started utilizing it because every time I would see him, he was using better technique. He was arching his back properly, contracting the lats. Where in the past, he was just hitting his arms. And I think that he has a really good mentality of wanting to go out there and improve.
Yeah.
But he just didn't know what to do.
He's a sponge. He's ready to absorb everything.
Didn't know what to do. So a lot of that was just like, hey, try this, try that. And then I'm seeing him implement that.
Yeah.
And so I guess that leads me to the next thing is that these younger athletes, they just need some mentorship. So if you have the ability to do that, please do, because I'm going to, and I am going to shoot a video with him, do a training session with him, kind of walk through for those people that are beginners. Because everyone asks me, oh man, Hany only works with the top athletes. You think that's what I did my whole life to get to where I'm at?
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
It's because I don't have the time to work with the amateur beginner type of athletes anymore because I'm running Evogen. We have other companies. I'm working also with the fact that I'm trying to build out the new headquarters. There's a lot of different things that go on behind the scenes that you guys don't watch or see. And so at the end of the day, I don't have the ability to just work with a bunch of people. I never really did because the way I work. But with this type of thing, I do think that it could be beneficial. So again, I haven't decided what channel I'm going to put it on yet. I think I'm going to put it on the Evogen channel just because a lot of that training has been going there and more of the podcasts and information has been going on my personal channel for on YouTube. But if you haven't subscribed to the Evogen channel, go check it out because chances are it's going to go and it's going to end up over there with the rest of the training stuff that I do. But again, man, I think this was a good conversation.
Yeah.
I really feel that hopefully people out there, guys, like, reminder, like, subscribe, comment. And I have been going through a lot of the messages on YouTube.
And we covered quite a few different, we had to kind of, you can't go too deep into certain things, but we covered quite a few topics. And so I think that just, if there are specifics that you guys really wanted to hear even more of a deep dive on, make sure you drop that in the comments. We'll kind of elaborate a little bit more on, because I think we'll have to kind of touch on this topic a bit more in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that I also have a really good friend who's also a psychiatrist. And him and I have been talking a little bit more lately about some of the things that he's going through. But I think it would definitely behoove all of us and all the listeners to listen to what's been going on.
For sure.
Because it's a lot worse than we think. It's out there since this whole pandemic happened and started. So again, it's been great. Thank you guys all for all the support. You guys have been doing an amazing job sharing, so please continue to do that. It's going to help grow the channel. It's going to allow me to continuously justify coming out in here and being able to do these Q&As and being able to do these interviews. And let me know if there's people you want me to interview, if there's questions you want me to ask on the next Q&A. Again, it's going to be on the YouTube page. That's the best place to go to put all of those questions, comments, concerns, anything like that. And we really appreciate all of your support. And this channel continues to grow. So I'm Hany Rambod, my co-host Austin, and that's the truth.